Hello. This is the Anonymous Reality TV blogger. Hope you guys are having an amazing day. Today I'm going to review Insecure Season 5, Episode 2. And we have 8 more episodes to go after this, which will commemorate our series finale, unfortunately, because I love this show. But we basically pick off from where we left off in the last episode, where things were awkward between Molly and Issa, to now it's like a year later. And the episode's entitled Growth, which they have done in their friendship. So now they're BFF again. They're going on dinner dates. They are spending time at each other's apartments. Molly's spending the night sometimes at Issa's place and everything's on the up and up. And they're both single. They're both thriving in their careers. Molly's doing really well at her law firm and doing some additional projects and different planning. And then Issa, she now works for a brand agency to sponsor and provide funding through her Block company to where it's going to be highlighting underrepresented artists that are up and coming out of Crenshaw and other places in that Los Angeles area. So it shows her basically pitching what she wants to do, which is this local designer, which is played by Kofi. Oh my gosh, that man's so fine. But basically he has a company called Crenshaw, which he hires former inmates, and it's basically a clothing line to kind of highlight, a little bit of kind of what they have been through in jail, but kind of like jazzed up into a fashion line to kind of, give back to the community. And so originally, in the original pitch, there was supposed to be like a big performance with like drums and all this stuff. There were supposed to be people, riding on lowriders and everything else. And so the white guy in the room after the presentation was over said he liked it, but he wasn't sure whether or not to move forward with this artist because he says it seems a little bit ambitious for somebody that they don't know. And he was thinking about recommending some white artists that were already established and well known. And so Issa kind of felt away about that. And he's like, well, if we do move forward with Crenshaw, we may have to pull back. And I'm going to put together some notes. And so we're like, okay. And so then we move forward over to Molly, who is visiting her family. And I believe it's like her nephew or relative has like a birthday party. And so she's talking with her parents about estate planning and, seeing if they call out the estate lawyer that she recommended to them about planning for their future if something ever happens to them. And so her mom pulls out this like little piece of paper that basically has like all of the relatives and what she wants them to get that she just has folding up in her pocket. And it was just hilarious. It was a hotmess.com. And so then the mom was grilling Molly about her being single. And Molly's like, I'm really not pressed about dating right now. And so then her mom invites this guy, Herbert, who who's Molly knew previously. And he's a deacon at the church at like 15. And so it's just funny because you could tell by Molly's face, she's like not attracted and not interested in this guy at all. And, he's like, yeah, I do trap gospel now. We got to keep up with what the kids are doing and this and that. And Molly just has like this cringy look on her face. And so then she just goes back into the house with her mom. And then they're talking. And so then she's like, he like appears and starts playing the random trap song. And I just like fell out because I was like, what in the heck is this? And basically her mom was like, the rate that Molly is going, her father's going to be in a wheelchair and extremely old by the time she gets married. And she doesn't want that for Molly. She doesn't want Molly to be rolling down the aisle essentially by the time they finally get married or whatever. So then Molly was kind of doing some introspective thinking and thinking about, previously the dating apps and things she was on, and then also thinking back to some of her exes and the things that went right or went wrong. And she was like reviewing some of the questions. So then we see Issa talk. She wants to bring in one of the managers and have like a private one-on-one to discuss some concerns she had of, the white guy basically suggesting that there should be some notes for the Crenshaw presentation. And so she's like thinking, okay, we have this big steak, and eggs breakfast, and we could just have this one-on-one. And so then they bring out a third plate of steak, and it's like this huge piece of steak. And lo and behold, here comes the white brand manager that Issa was not hoping that would be there. And sidebar, I have to say, I don't know how many times this happens in the corporate world, but it is so relatable when you think you're having a one-on-one with somebody who you think is your ally, and then they bring in the person who you don't want there, or they bring in a manager or supervisor that you don't want there, that is going to try to still undermine you or still say something that you don't want to hear, which was the whole purpose of you wanting something private with the ally, and it was just too much. So I was like, oh man, that's triggering, because that has happened so many times before to me. So after that, essentially, Issa said she really wanted to give this platform to Crenshaw to really, see what he's made of, and really have the opportunity to, shine in what he feels his vision is going to be best to showcase his fashion line. And so then it shows the white manager and Issa's ally basically having this whispering. And Issa kind of like leans in, like, what are you guys whispering about? And so then he comes back and he's like, well, you know what? He was saying, I have some notes. If you agree to these notes and to these terms, then we can move forward with Crenshaw and there won't be an issue or whatever. Because basically we'll be within the budget and we won't have to worry about anything. And so in between that, Issa also goes to her ex's Nate's barbershop to kind of just talk about her upcoming event with the block and stuff. And it's kind of weird that they're friends, but whatever. Because even Molly on one of their dinner dates was kind of like, I can't be friends with somebody that I've seen naked before. So, and she was trying to figure out how Issa could do it. So, and Issa claims that it's all good and that, Nate's doing him, so there's nothing going to happen. And Molly's looking at her like, yeah, okay. So then finally, Issa goes to Crenshaw, which is the company, the fashion line that Kofi Sierra's character owns, and, basically shows him, and his team getting ready for this fashion show and putting together some things. And so then Issa's explaining to him how she was told by her boss that, there might be a couple things to pull back on, like taking out the lowriders out of the show and taking out also the drum performance, that might be a little bit too much. And so Kofi had an issue with that because he's like, those are basically the main elements of my show that's going to make my show unique. And so then Issa had said, well, if it doesn't happen, then there's a possibility they may replace him with some white artists who've done this longer. And so he was like, see, that's the issue. He's like, they're always, wanting to replace people, and you don't get a chance, you don't get to see what their potential is. And I agree with that. Too many times when people, it depends on certain companies, but they'll take a chance on certain unknowns, but it's a lot harder for Black and brown people to, really have somebody believe in them right off the jump when they're up and coming, because people are more so worried about the risk than what the reward can be. So totally relatable in that sense. And so then we move forward into the actual event, and we show it kind of like earlier in the day where Issa's getting ready. Everything is kind of set up with the, the new brand with like the water on the labels, the naming of the brand, the black and white. It's shot at like the California African Museum, and everything's like laid out, gift bags, everything's like ready for this fashion show. And now we just need to like finish the setup basically for Crenshaw. So then it's funny because Issa's assistant comes over and she's like, yeah, I can't believe ex-cons are so fine. I want to be locked up where they're at. And I just looked at her like, girl, stop it. So then Issa's assistant, it was funny because Molly had came, and so she's like waving this Dasani bottle, and Issa quickly grabs it like, no, you got to stick to the brand of, the purified water that we have with the brand and not Dasani. And so then Issa's assistant like then does a metal detector scan, and and Molly's like, really? And she's like, yeah, you did bring a gun before. So it was just funny, from the drama last time. And so then that weird news lady comes over and tries to like do an interview with Issa. And so Issa really isn't feeling it, but she kind of just goes over anyways. And so then as she's like starting the interview, her assistant then comes over and is like, yeah, we have an issue. And she's like doing these weird hand motions. And so basically what happens is Issa and her go backstage, and lo and behold, people are on lowriders, and you hear like drum performances being practiced, which were like the two main elements that the white brand manager did not want Issa to have in the show. And so Issa basically goes up to Kofi's character and is like, what is going on? These are the pieces that we agreed upon from the notes that would not be in the show. And so Kofi's like, well, that doesn't really go with my vision. So I decided to keep it back in. And so, basically Issa saying, I'm responsible. I belong to a certain brand to where they've agreed to certain terms that results into the funding and showcasing this. And you're basically going against what they said you can't do. And so Kofi's like, well, you can't support me halfway. Like, this is either all or nothing. And so Kofi is like, I don't need your help. I'm not a charity case. Like, I refuse to be a sellout, which I didn't agree with him saying a sellout per se, because I felt as though a sellout means you're willing to go against anything and everything that you were brought up to believe and stand for, and to get famous or to get a buck or whatever it is. You're basically going against your own to achieve that level of success. Whereas in this case, it was just a situation to where there were a couple of notes that the manager had that he felt might have taken the show a little bit, over the top, or might not have resonated well or gotten the results that they're looking for. Or basically it might have just been too much because it was a brand new person that they've never worked with before, and they weren't sure from an artist perspective and a brand perspective, if they're putting all of this into somebody they do not know, is the risk going to be worth the reward? So essentially Kofi doesn't budge, and then Issa basically goes back out, and it's now nighttime where the fashion show's about to start. And Issa's telling Molly how she's concerned because basically, he's not doing, what they agreed upon the notes for him to take out of his show. And so then the show starts. And so Molly's like, well, I don't see the issue. Everything's fine. Because it's like everybody's just like regularly modeling like normal. And there's no issue. And so then the next thing is the people on the lowriders then come out. And Molly's like, oh, I see. So Issa's like start freaking out. And the white brand manager, he is like sitting front row, and he has like all these weird looks on his face to where Issa thinks that everything is going bad. And so then the portion of the fashion show where they play the drums and stuff come out, and and then they like are shouting out, did all my clear NIGs go to heaven? And it was just crazy. And they were like all up in the poor white man's face, and he was like scared and looked crazy. And Issa's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get fired. I'm never going to be able to work for this brand agency again. Like, I'm going to have to go back to Lyft, and I don't even have my sticker anymore because I thought this was going to be it. Like, I finally had a career and I was making some money. Like, she is just like panicking. And so then she hid from her manager like after the show because she just thought that basically she was done. And so eventually the brand manager finds Issa, and he's like having small talk with her, and he was like, yeah, that was pretty explosive. And Issa's like, yeah, very explosive. And then, she's like, yeah, he's like a missile. And he was like, no, like even bigger than that. He just like took off. And so Issa's like thinking it's not going well. And so he said, this is one of those times where like the risk was worth it because he was really impressed with the show. And so he then told Issa to give him a call the following week so they can discuss, working together on some other deals with some other artists that are up and coming. So that's where Issa was like really happy that things ended up working out. And so then it kind of looked like after the show was over that Issa wanted to have a word with Kofi's character about what the feedback was on the fashion show. But then he was doing an interview with the reporter, and then Issa, it kind of looked like she just said, forget it. And then she ended up texting her ex Nate to see if he wanted to get drinks or something. And so earlier in the episode, they went out to some type of restaurant that had this really low lit ambiance that was bringing over candles to set the mood for couples. And so this go around, they are now at Issa's place, drinking some wine and this and that. And Issa's telling Nate everything that happened in the show. And he's basically hyping her up. It sounds like everything went good. And so Issa's dozing off and nodding off from too much to drink or whatever. And so that's when Nate's I think I'm going to head out or whatever. I'm going to call a Lyft. And so then Issa's oh, you can stay here. You stay the night here. And Nate was oh, for real? And I was oh, no, this is not going to go well. And so then it goes to them both in the bed. And Nate, of course, is going to make his move, starts kissing on Issa and stuff in the bed. And, originally I thought, oh, they're about to have sex. And then in the middle of it, Issa just starts crying. And I at first thought she was crying to get out of sleeping with him or to get him out, but she genuinely was crying because I think it just brought up old emotions or old hurt or whatever. And so then she just basically told him she wasn't ready. And then at some point she must have fell asleep or whatever, because then she woke up in the middle of the night and heard somebody shut the door. And so basically indicating that Nate had left. So that was basically the end of the episode, and Issa's looking up at the sky and stuff. And so then from there, they show previews for the next episode, and Lawrence is back. It shows Lawrence basically in San Francisco and him going out on a date and stuff. So more to come on that. Oh, also the last part of the end of the episode, it showed Molly on a date, and Molly basically hyping herself up, telling herself to embrace something new and this and that. So yeah, that was pretty much the end. Please let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to comment and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys again soon.